Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest aliens and UFOs encounters video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's do another entry here. This one coming once again from the reddit.com website, there from the subreddit called The Truth Is Here. In this case, we're going to focus on two encounters for this video, both of them coming from users that involved UFO encounters and both of them involving their early years, in this case when they were children. One of them though involves a very close upfront encounter within the UFO itself. It's very short, but still very memorable stuff. And as always, I'll give my own thoughts on each story afterward. The very first one, the title for it is called The Sixth Grade Camp. And then the next one is the one that's a little bit more scarier. It's called Scary Things My 5-Year-Old Has Told Me It Was Cold on Their Ship. So let's go ahead and let's share both entries here and then see essentially what they have to state with their UFO encounters. So the first one again is called Sixth Grade Camp, and it comes from a user called AdAdventurous2667. So here's what they state. A little weird experience here that I actually forgot about many years ago. For sixth grade camp, the year was 2004, I went to a place called Palomar Mountains in California. Of course, most of my time there was fun, lots of scary stories and activities. One night, about 3 cabins were taken outside for some scary stories by the campfire. My cabin, of course, being included in this. And so I was sitting next to my friend, and we were towards the back of the entire group. I was really into the scary story the counselor was telling when all of a sudden my friend nudges me. She says, "Hey, something is above us." And so I look up above us with her when we see this giant round plane in the sky. I say plane because once I looked at it, I could hear it make noise. This noise was sort of like a jet flying over. This big round plane had a few lights underneath it, and it was about maybe 3 to 4 football fields across. It was pretty close to us, and by that I meant it was right above the trees. It was moving very slowly. It did not turn but just glided past. And so I looked down to see if everyone was looking. The weird thing was that when I looked down, I couldn't hear the jet noise. And I realized only about 15 of us were looking up while everyone else was listening to the story being told by the counselor. And so I looked back up and I could hear the jet noise again. And as I'm watching this plane start to leave and be out of sight, I think, wow, we need to tell everyone and figure out what this is. Finally, as the plane leaves our sight, the jet noise cuts off, and we look back down towards the counselor. To this day, I have no idea why, but we did not bring it up. There was no discussion about it. We just went back to listening to the last story, got up, and then went back to the cabin. I actually forgot about this for about 5 years and until I was talking about UFOs with my family, and all of a sudden this memory came back like a tidal wave. I was able to ask my friend if she remembers this as well, and she does. She also doesn't know why we didn't talk about it or why she didn't remember it until I reminded her about it. And so my uncle joked that we must have been abducted, and sometimes I wonder if we were. And that's essentially it. That's everything that this user, AdAdventurous2667, states with their encounter. So let's go ahead and let's share some stuff here. So for starters, this happened there at the Palomar Mountains in California. Anyone familiar with that location? Is it like a prime real estate when it comes to UFOs? If so, just please let me know. And then this, of course, happened in their 6th grade, so back in 2004. And then interesting thing, though, was this thing was gigantic. 3 to 4 football fields. I mean, we're talking like hundreds of feet long, and yet it was just gliding across the sky. And whatever the noise it was making, the stuff that they called it like a plane noise, it could only be heard if you were looking up. If you were actually just staying focused in the ground, or at least in this case looking at the counselor, then nothing could be heard from the jet noise itself. Isn't that interesting? Here was this gigantic thing just basically roaming above them, and only a few of them, those who were prone enough to look upwards, could detect it. Otherwise, it would just be there on its own. There was nobody else to see it. move unless you happen to hear it or look upward. And then that was interesting too to hear that this person, this user, basically didn't talk about it for another 5 years. It was almost like it was, I don't know, taken away from their mind, purposely taken away from their mind, made to be forgotten, something along those lines, at least until it was by a weird happen chance that they were talking to their family, and then they started discussing all of a sudden the UFOs, and then bam, this memory just came back on there. Interesting stuff all around. I'm wondering if why also the other parties, because they mentioned there were about 15 of them that were looking upwards. They were bound to have seen this thing as well, right? Not only that, but hearing it as well. So I'm wondering why essentially they didn't talk about it either. If it's one person, that's fine. If it's two people, maybe that's a coincidence. But 15 of them are not talking about it with the counselor, about this gigantic thing that's hundreds of feet long. Interesting that none of them brought up that information. So that was pretty cool. They were doing this scary stories, probably talking about ghosts and whatnot, and all of a sudden they're hearing this information about this UFO gliding above them. But I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks about Palomar Mountains. If anyone has any clue with regards to that, I'd love to hear. It reminded me too of a very good park that I'm gonna see one day. I'm gonna go there at night. It's called the Palmetto State Park near Gonzales, Texas. That is an area that also has cabins, and that is an area that is also prone to UFO sightings. Definitely something that I want to see soon. Now the next one is again titled Scary Things My 5-year-old Has Told Me. It was cold on their ship, and it comes from a user by the name of Tap Rack Bang USMC. So let's go ahead and let's share this very brief encounter, but a scary one here too. So it says, my 5-year-old has had 2 nightmares that seem to be abduction events. I have posted about both. I just wanted to share a couple of details of his first account. I asked if he thought they would come back. His response, they would only come back when it's cold. They like the cold. I asked, how does he know that? And he said, because it was cold on their ship. He proceeded to tell me that it was much bigger on the inside than it looked like on the outside. He also said there were about 20 5-year-olds on the ship, to which they were all stuck in chairs. He said they were trying to cut the metal off the chairs. He also told me that the red one and the blue one floated him up to the ship. Does this resonate with anyone? Please share your thoughts. Then that's it. That's everything that this user stated with their very short but still very scary encounter. First off, in this case, it was not involving the user. Instead, it was involving their 5-year-old. How about that? You definitely don't want to hear something like that when it comes to children being abducted and then being in a situation like that. I was just imagining this poor child like saying it almost in a deadpan manner, like realizing that they were abducted, they couldn't do much about it, and then here they are having to explain essentially what occurred. And then there they are inside the ship, a cold ship, as he mentioned. And then the part where there was not just a few, but 20 5-year-olds all stuck in chairs, that was something else. But the part that definitely gave me the heebie-jeebies one was he said they were trying to cut the metal off the chairs. Clearly, these children were abducted. They were there. They knew they were in a bad situation with this UFO, and they were trying to do everything they could to get out of there. How they were trying to cut it, who knows, but it was definitely just eerie, just considering that. And the fact that this poor 5-year-old had this happen not just once, but twice, considering them more along the lines of nightmares, that's the kind of stuff that just, again, is just very horrifying to read. So there's all these UFO encounters and alien encounters that I've mentioned throughout my long playlist of videos. And for the most part, it's mostly just people seeing things up in the sky or seeing things from afar when it comes to aliens. But in some cases, it's getting much closer to them. Like the Hospital Goblins is one that stands out. Or the Enfield Horror is another one. But in this case, it's having an interaction where you're inside the actual UFO itself against your will. And then who knows what else will happen afterward. That's where it's truly to another level. Worst case scenario when it comes to something like this. But yeah, that's pretty much it for that story. But if anybody has any more info, something else they wanted to share, then please Post those comments below if anybody knows more information again about that area there in California. I'd definitely love to hear, especially from a local level at the Palomar Mountains. If anybody knows more encounters or stories there, that'd be really awesome to hear. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care.